Right, irreverent, unscripted, nostalgic, ad hoc, off the cuff SF and fantasy book haul. Wasn't planning this today. I thought I'd just do it in the living room because I can't be bothered to set everything up, and I've just come in and it's warm. It's my day off, and this sort of came out of a thing. I had a message on social media from my friend Paul Trembling, who's a crime writer and former CSI. How exciting. This is Paul's latest book, Local Killer, and he and I have been friends for some time. He comes to lots of events I've done in bookshops and what have you. Good, solid reader, lovely man, really, really nice. So if you like a good bit of police procedural, do check out this series. Really great stuff. And he's sort of downshifting and is moving soon. I'll be sorry to see him go because he's a lovely chap. And he said, well, you can come and have the pick of the collection I've got on hand in the current house, see if there's anything you want. So I thought, well, why not? Absolutely. So this is as they come out of the bags. We just had a little chat this morning, and I just got the bus back and what have you. So this is just some stuff which I picked out, and beginning with Keith Laumer, The World Shuffler. Rather nice coronet paperback, and got the old lightning bolt there, which is always a good graphic gambit. And this is from about 73. And Laumer is somebody I've not read much by him, but he's very good at pace, twists. It's entertainment rather than art, but he's very sharp. I always thought he should have been a crime writer, actually. So I thought I'd go with that because it's rather nice. And it's not when you see that often, actually. So I thought I'd add that to the nostalgia library. Because, of course, I do buy things for nostalgia, and something I'm hoping to do at some point when I move to a bigger house, when that'll be, who knows, is to have like a nostalgia section. I'll have my serious reading SF and my nostalgia. You don't want to see an HMV bag, do you? You put it down there because the suspense will build then. You can featureize this rather glorious cushion, he said laughingly. So, straight into one of the picks of the bunch. Great book, which I've wanted in this livery for quite some time. One of this author's finest, and this is a Grafton from the late 80s, and this is Jack Vance, The Blue World, a singleton, not a standalone, a singleton, much admired by the Vance fan base, and really, really nice. And I've been after one of these for a while, and it's a very, very, very minor lean to the spine, but I can go with that, and that's absolutely great. So that'll be fantastic. So I look forward to reading that again. Bit of a minor classic, really, that one. So great, great stuff. What else do we have? Well, let's see. This is a nice old paperback library book. Now, I'm not sure what date this is from. Let's have a little look in here. Paperback Library, New York. These are mostly 70s and 80s. This is 1971. First published, I think, as a magazine serial around about 1960. And this is The Glory That Was by Lynn Sprague de Camp. So this is, I would say, yeah, it's a time travel story and about 27th century Greece. So there we go. So, but I was really so attracted to that rather nice cover and livery. Very, very nice indeed. And again, not a book you see very often, really. So there you go. Best thing I read by Lynn Sprague de Camp was a biography of H.P. Lovecraft, which was excellent, which was published by NEL in the UK. This must have been like late 70s, early 80s. I bought a hardcover first for £5 in a bookshop in Bradford and Avon. This must be like 25 years ago. Read it and I sold it for £25. That was a good score. Wish I kept it, really. Right, another favourite. This is a nostalgia buy, but it's also an exceptionally good book as well. I've mentioned it before on the channel. This is Night Walk by Bob Shaw. Bob Shaw's first novel, and this is the Golank's A format paperback. All of these are A formats until we come to the Bs, and I'll tell you when we're shifting to the larger format. This dates from about 1986, I would say 87 maybe. Let's have a look. And Golank's didn't do paperbacks until 86. Before that, they licensed everything. So there you go, 87, and this is the VGSF, Victor Gollanc's SF. Very good science fiction, I guess you would say. And if you've not read White Night Walk, it's a classic example of a great entertaining read. It's escapist, it's entertainment, but it's very well written. And, you know, there's no reason why hard SF can't be. 1, very well written. 2, excellent on every level, but 3, still provide you with lots of fun. The postman just nipped something through the door, so we'll have a look at that in a minute as well. But yeah, and this was the edition I first read, and I later sort of backtracked, and I've got hardcover first and other editions. But yeah, it's a really great fun Shaw book, and it's all about vision. He works in optics in this one, and I really recommend it. It's a great read and nice and fleet and sharp, which is what we like. What else do we have? hold on, stop, press. What did the postman pop through the door? Can I get it open without the scissors? Probably not. Should I even try? Probably not. Am I going to try? Yes. Will this end in disaster? Who can say? Probably not. It's sort of dramatic, isn't it? What have we got here? So I have a few things on order at the moment. I can't think for the life of me what this is. So, gosh. Looks like an eBay job. Oh yes. Oh no. Okay, this is interesting because this is a book which isn't that uncommon, but in the pictures on eBay it looked like it was in fantastic condition. However, the seller has made virtually no effort with protective packaging, just with a piece of plastic wrapped around it. So we might get 0 point on the feedback thing for this. But I decided to pick this up because this is a book I've got in paperback. It is a favourite. There was a Eastern Press limited of it. The original hardcover I think is pretty uncommon. I can't think who published it stateside. I don't think it was published over here. My friend James Wright did an introduction to it in its most recent trade paperback incarnation. We're gradually getting here. And the UK hardcover was Faber, and it's very hard to get because it's quite collectible. But this is a Readers Union Book Club, SF Book Club edition, and that's not too bad actually, and that's Beyond Apollo by Barry N. Malzberg. Now, if you haven't watched my Avant-Garde Writers Pub Salon series, I know more of you watched episode 1. Episode 2 is actually more interesting, I will say, and there's a bit more of Barry in it, and James Wright has got a bit of a channel, so do watch that. It's really good because it gets a little bit more focused because we just sort of filmed it rambling in the pub. So that's that, and I'm quite pleased with that. That's the best copy I've seen. And because I've got this now, let's have a look inside. Paper's nice. Paper is absolutely fine. That'll stop me from spending more money on getting an Eastern Press leather-bound one, because that would be 25-30 quid and it'd be posted in the States. And I know at some point I'll probably do it, so I'll go with that because they take up less space on the shelves as well. Fantastic stuff. And now back to the rest of the video. Another series from the late 80s which gives me a warm glow is Hamlin's Venture SF series. A lot of these were reprints, and the basic ideas, this is number 3, was that, you know, it was no fantasy, no boredom. They said it was all action and adventure. So these are basically, again, escapism. David Drake, one of the sort of top sort of military SF writers, and you know, it's got an introduction by Jerry Pournelle, so you know, if you're in the sort of fighting mood, this is the thing. There is a little bit of a ripple to the spine, but I do have warm feelings about these. I hated them at the time, being a real new wave guy. I was like, oh, really anti these, but you know, they've got a period charm all of their own, and you know, there are some real crackers in this series as well. I can't say I've read this, so I thought I'd pick that up because they are increasingly hard to find, and this one's in relatively good nick, and when it's gratis, what can you do? You're not so gonna sort of pass up that chance. Let me stash these behind me there because we've got some of my books in the video with his books there as well, so there you go. Now, I was in two minds about these, as I don't really like this writer, but I did a little fantasy video recently looking at my memories of fantasy when I first started book selling, 84, 85, 86, what was really big and how one author would come to it at a time. And these again are increasingly hard to get in good condition, and I do like the jackets because they're Josh Kirby, and these are Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett and Mort by Terry Pratchett. So these are the third and fourth books in the sequence, and so they've got Unbroken Spine. So these are kind of nostalgia things. I don't like Pratchett's writing. I didn't like him particularly, as I said in my encounters with him, so sorry, but it's true. But you know, I do like the Josh Kirby covers, and these do sort of mean a lot. They take me back to sort of younger, happier days, I guess, you know. And what's wrong with being nostalgic? I don't care if you think it's sad. What about all these old guys in these rock and roll bands still touring, whatever? You could say that was sad. They're enjoying themselves. Let them do it. You know, that's the thing. It's all about enjoyment. So there you go. What else have we got? Now, we've got a couple of B formats in here. And these are books which I've wanted in this format, in these particular liveries, for some time, but I've not been able to find them. This one I haven't seen for a very long time, and this is an omnibus edition of Jack Vance's Planet of Adventure series, and this is Grafton. And looking at the sticker on the back, I think, yeah, this was bought from Games Workshop. Good grief. And Paul must have bought that a long time ago. And I remember selling this. And let's see what year. It is 85. 85. So that's one of the earliest Graftons after it ceased being Granada. And it's got a bit rippled spine and things. It's a good reading copy. I have all these books. It's City of the Shash, Servants of the, we won't say it, the Durda, the New. Quite easy books to get, but I would like a mint copy of this, but I can't find one. This will be handy as a reading copy because the ones I have are sort of pristine. And yeah, very good stuff indeed. And again, excellent escapist entertainment, but written with verve, style, elan. Style, this is the thing, colour, the muscularity of his characterization. Vance isn't always great on plot, you know, but, you know, he does tend to have sort of fairly sort of straight ahead plots, but, you know, he was a real sort of poetic soul. So yeah, really great stuff. And this is something I'm finding a lot with a lot of contemporary writing at the moment of any kind, not just genre SF. I'm finding that an awful lot of writers now, they just don't have any style. Everything has to be readable. In other words, simplistic and direct. And, you know, when you're a sophisticated reader like me, that simply isn't enough. It's just not enough. And the trouble is, if you're young and you're reading this stuff, is you're never going to get into sort of more well-written things and sort of things which have real flavour and taste and linger, you know. So Vance is a stylist, which we like. So in this bag, we've got some more Jack Vance and other things I've been looking for. Again, these are books I remember selling, and again, I want them in really tip-top condition, and I cannot find them anywhere. They're always in a state. These are better than most, and we're talking about Lioness in Granada. Now that's interesting. That's Granada, so that must have been a bit earlier. Now I would have said these was a bit later. Let's have a look. And this is 84, reprinted 84. So that's 1984. So that's the year I came into the trade. So that was already in B format. B format was very unusual for fantasy then. Some of the Tolkien stuff was in B, so this is very unusual. These were never in A at this point. I can't remember them certainly, and they had these covers for years. So it's Lioness, which is a kind of Arthurian thing, and this is Lioness 2, The Green Pearl. Absolutely beautiful. Again, they're not tip-top. They're handy reading copies, but at some point I hope to upgrade. Now, if you go online, of course, you'll see tons of these. The trouble is they're all at World of Books in these generic places where you don't know what you're going to get. They emphasize how quick they are, you know, great the service is. You know, I don't care if it takes 3 weeks. What I want is a decent conditioned book. That's more important, but they're too lazy to list and photograph them all. But yeah, aren't they absolutely beautiful? Beautiful stuff. So yeah, so 3 lovely Jack Vance Bs there, but they are reading copies. I am hoping to upgrade at some point, but yeah, really, really nice. It's nice to have those for nostalgia, and at some point I will come across much better copies which are mint. I don't know how it'll happen, but it'll happen. You've got to be patient and you have to be diligent. Right, what else do we have? So, bear with me because I've got things in the bag, because what I do when I'm doing a big book haul, I take a large bag, a Skechers bag, shoes, and then I take a couple of smaller plastic bags to wrap things in to prevent edge wear and flopping while one is on a train, bus, car, or what have you. So, you know, it's very important to do your preparation for these things. We can't really mess around. So let's see what else we've got. We've got a good stash of A's here, including some things which I've thought about getting, and maybe some of them in hardcover, some I never got around to. There's a lot of nostalgia buys in here, a few collection fillers, what have you. And Fritz Lieber, Ship of Shadows. This is relatively easy to get in hardcover. The Gollancz hardcover is about 79, and at that point Lieber was guest of honour at the Worldcon in Brighton, and it was the first Worldcon in the UK, I think, or certainly the first big one. And there was an edition of this, and I think there was a special limited done for it as well. So difficult to get, but it's Mayflower, so it's Granada. So you can Mayflower Pathy, all these things, they all feed into Granada and eventually Grafton. And very, very nice indeed. And yeah, this is stories. This is his award-winning stories. It's got Gonna Roll the Bones, which I like. It's got Catch That Zeppelin, which I always felt was a bit disappointing. But it's also got The Big Time, which is basically a novella, a full-length novel. These days people say a novella is almost 200 pages long. It's not. It's just the novels have got bigger and bigger and bigger. since the 60s for commercial reasons, because publishers think people want value for money. Pad it out, pad it out. Never mind padding it out. Write a decent, crisp story. If it needs to be big, that's fair enough. If it doesn't, edit it down, like M. John Harrison said. That's the way to do it. So yeah, Ship of Shadows. Bit of a spine thing, but yeah, this will sort of really, this is the sort of book that'll go in the collection, and I'll think, I don't really need a hardcover because I've got it there, and I've not read The Big Time for years, so looking forward to that, so that's good news. What else do we have? Fantasy. 80s fantasy. What's interesting is a lot of the best traditional genre fantasy of the 1980s was written by women, and a lot of singletons were really, really good, and they were mostly by American writers as well, who, you know, maybe grew up in the shadow of Ursula K. Le Guin. And this is somebody who is better known for her SF, and this is Beauty by Sherry S. Tepper in Grafton, and this is the point where the Collins fire and water symbol is coming along. So I would say this is probably about 89, 90. Yes, it says on the back, first great fantasy achievement of the 90s. So let's have a look. Now, Tepper, of course, has Grass, I think, is in Golanc's Masterworks. And let's just have a look at this. Yeah, first printing, 92. There you go. And it's kind of a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, which I'm good with. That's fine. And good little writer. Very, very nice. Unbroken spine. A little bit of minor fading. But that goes in my sort of legacy fantasy library, which I am trying to build up, really. Even though I don't read it very much, to be honest. You know, it's now and again. I've not read that one, so that'd be interesting. Gate to Women's Country is another famous book by her, of course. So, what do we have? Well, who is it? Michael Moorcock, I think, said he can't write a single sentence with any consistency. And of course, he was talking about Larry Niven. Now, if there's anybody that the New Wave guys like to lambast after Heinlein and Bliss to a degree, it was Larry Niven. And I can understand this because there's some clunkiness. But again, this is nostalgia stuff. And this is a lovely little Orbit A format of The Magic Goes Away. Look at that art. Isn't that quite something? Fantastic. So this is one of the fantasy novels. And of course, what Larry would do these things, you know, he'd have strict rules and things so they feel like SF. It's nice and fleet, but that's really nostalgia library just to go in. When I have space for a nostalgia bay, you know, which will simulate a bookshop circa 1984, then that'll be in it. So yeah, isn't that lovely? Great stuff. Whether I'll ever read it, who can say? It may get passed on to somebody who's keener than me. It might happen. So, Niven again, and you know, these are all books I used to sell. This one I remember really well because I used to sell tons of Larry stuff in the 80s. This is The Integral Trees, and there's a sequel, of course, called The Smoke Ring. I've never read this, or is it? No, this is the other way round. The Integral Trees is the sequel to The Smoke Ring, I think. I can't remember. Never read this, and there's, you know, Jerry Pohl says it's good, but they were mates and they wrote books together. So yeah, I used to sell lots of this. This is Orbit. The SF imprint of Futura, part of McDonald, long gone as imprints. Oh gosh, it's got all sorts of weird diagrams in there, sort of things you hard SF guys like. Look at that, wow. What did Christopher Priest say? I hate books with maps in them, but there you go. So let's see, 1985, wow, gosh, I was only 22 then, my God. Fantastic stuff, really nice. Again, nice, good old-fashioned nostalgia buy. Then we return to the world of Venture SF. And Richard C. Meredith, one of the better authors in Venture, and this is A Breathtaking Chase Through Time. And I love the title of this book, and you know me and titles. You know, if you write a book, if you don't have an interesting title, then, you know, unless you've already proven yourself with a good prose style or something, I'm not usually interested. So here we go. Run, Come See Jerusalem. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? Hamlin. The later ones were Arrow, because Hamlin, I think, were bought up and became part of what would be Random House. I know you don't like all this publisher stuff, but it means a lot to me because I'm a bookseller. So there you go. So yeah, great title that. And I imagine that that's a biblical quotation. And apparently it says, centuries earlier, New Jerusalem had been Chicago. It's now ruled by the World Ecumenical Church, a repressive theocracy. So there's a sort of religious theme. So, you know, it's interesting that, gone with that. is it actually a biblical quotation? Because of course, very often if it is, there'll be an epigraph at the front of the book, and it isn't. So I guess I'd have to look that up in a biblical concordance. You know what concordance is? When you get a Bible, you can get a concordance with it. Concordance is a book where you can look up all the sort of different bits. You think, what part of the Bible is that? It's a really handy sort of thing. So there you go. There's a Cordwainer Smith concordance, bizarrely enough, from Australia, and all the instrumentality stories which Nesfer do, which is probably really great. So there you go. So another venture one, very, very nice. And this one is, you know, this is one which I don't think I've got this. I've got other things by Meredith. If I do have it, I'm going to pass it on to a friend. So we'll see. Here's another Liber. And I was drawn to this by its cover. It's Ace. It is one I know. It's not one I've read. And it is related to The Big Time, which I mentioned earlier. Or so I believe it is from what I remember. Yes, it is. And this is Change War by Fritz Lieber. There's this price sticker on there, 50p. A. Butcher and Son. And obviously this is a US paperback. Slight spine lean there. Slight spine lean. Guys, if you are watching this and you're an eBay seller and you're selling books, take pictures of your spines, because you will sell more if people can see what a spine is like. Be honest about it. Show the flaws. Nobody wants to see the inside the pages and stuff. It's ridiculous. Everybody does that. Spine. What is the spine like? Is it leaning? Is it rippled? Let's have a cross-section picture so we can see, and a picture of the spine itself. Come on, you know, that's how I do it. There's a remainder punch there, but we can live with that. And, you know, despite the doublet and hose this chap is sporting, I think we can live with this as a cover. And this is sort of like a Time War type thing, and the Big Time's very much about that. So let's see. This is short stories. So, wow, look at that. 58, 60, 64. They're late 50s to early 60s. The Big Time was a good bit before that, I seem to remember. Yeah, so Liber would knit back to those, but that's quite nice. So that sort of goes in my Liber library. That's one to keep. We then move on to an author who became quite a bestseller, 70s and 80s, for his, I guess you'd call them sort of martial arts things, or sort of, not martial arts, they're not shinozu because they weren't Chinese, they were Japanese, sort of Japanese historical novels with some military aspects. So sort of James Clavell would do. In sort of things like Shogun, and that's Eric van Lespade. But van Lespade wrote fantasy novels as well, and these are books which I remember selling. They're published by Star, W.H. Allen, who were like the runts of the litter in the paperback thing. You know, at the top you'd have Penguin, and you'd have Collins with Grafton and Fontana, and at the bottom you'd have Star. But they did some cracking stuff as well. You know, they're quite exploitive. The list was very small. But my first Charles Bukowski was in Star, so there you go. And I'm trying to remember what order these go in, but these are, let's see, what is this series called? I can't remember. I can't remember what the series is called. And you're in suspense now, which is better than being in suspenders, I guess. But there you go. The Sunset Warrior. Marvellous. No blurb on the back. Now, isn't that confidence? All it tells you is that it's the first volume in the Legendary series. I did see a set of these in hardcover online a while ago, and I thought about it because I love these jackets. And of course, I have the Book of the New Sun with liveries by this artist, and I can't think who it is. It's Bruce Pemberton, isn't it? I'm sure it's Pemberton. And yeah, really, really nice. And here's the second one, the Shallows of Night. Isn't that fantastic? Shallows of Night. Really, really nice. And finally, the climactic third volume, Dai-san. So, which sounds pretty oriental, doesn't it? So it's the Sunset Warrior trilogy. Look at that. And these are long, long, long gone. They've been out of print for a very long time. But very nice. So yeah, I have memories of selling those. And they're a bit spine faded. There's a little bit of rippling, a tiny bit of lean on the first one. But yeah, for my fantasy nostalgia library, lovely. The only problem is, where am I going to put them for now? Who can say? Anyway, we move on. Recently, as you know, I was on the Italian island of Capri, and I think probably a couple of days after this video, you'll see one where I go to the house of the Scots writer Compton Mackenzie, who lived there for quite some time, wrote a few books set there, but he's best known for this book, which was made into a famous film. It's not an SF book, which is Whiskey Galore. Never read it. nice penguin. He wrote a book called Sinister Street, which was a huge smash before this. And George Orwell read it at school, and when he was caught reading it, he wasn't flogged, he was caned for reading it because it had a really bad reputation. Mackenzie was gay, of course, but he sort of kept it quite quiet. He was married, and this is a famous book about sort of whiskey smuggling and what have you. So there you go. It's a nice little penguin, so I thought I'd have that because I'll give it a go. It's one of those famous books you sort of feel you should read. So we'll see, and maybe it'll be something that'll turn me on. Who can say? And again, we have more Venture SF. A writer I'm reasonably fond of. I think have I got too many books by him? I've got quite a few I haven't read. I must sort of catch up. And again, it's Venture, and this is David Gerald, and this is Starhunt. And Paul was saying to me that it has a very similar plot to a war novel he read, or a military history book about a stricken submarine. So there we go. So that's Starhunt. I mean, that's about as generic as it comes, isn't it? But these will look nice together on the shelf. And at this point, this is number 6, but I think this is a reprint. Let me have a look, because they went over to Arrow. Let's see. Yeah, this is published in 85 in Hamlin Paperbacks. This is 87, and it's Legend. Arrow's SF imprint Legend launched about 87. So they snipped up Hamlin. So there's a few of them I think have Arrow on the spine, I seem to remember. So if you've got a set with this, you won't have a set with the same colophon on all of them, because halfway through they were purchased and what have you. So that's actually a reprint, but there you go. Little bit of a leaning spine, but again, gratis. You're not going to say no, are you really? Not for something as fun as that. Okay, well, somebody I've not read much of is NEL. It's got a nice period jacket. It's obviously a 70s book. Is Lloyd Biggle Jr. All the Colours of Darkness, and it's set in 1986. Good grief. When was it published? Let's have a look. Somebody's written their name inside, Tristan. I wonder if that's Tristan from Tristan and Isolde. Who knows? Or Iseult, or whatever it should be. Let's see. Published by Dobson, 64. Copyrighted 1963, 60 years ago, the year I was born, my God. And this is 1975, so there you go. All the Colours of Darkness. So Biggle is somebody I'm intending to read more of, because I have neglected him. We'll pop it on there. Right, what have we got? We're coming to the end, really. We've got a couple of things here. So as you see, the sort of top things to me are the Bob Shaw and the Jack Vance. I've got a couple of crime novels here. I'm not really reading crime at the moment, though when I do a reviews wrap up later this month, I'm going to try. I keep meaning to do reviews once a month like most people do, to see what I've been reading. But I am struggling to read anything because I'm spending so much time on YouTube. But I was in work the other day talking with a friend about the Lou Archer books by Ross MacDonald, and we were both saying somebody we hadn't read was John D. MacDonald, no relation, the Travis McGee books, and this is one of them, Turquoise Lament in pan, with a politically incorrect cover with a young lady in a bikini on it. Now you can't really argue with that, can you? That's fantastic. And let's see, this was published in, I would say this is about 74. 1975 by Hale, 1976. I'm not far out there. Great company, Pan. I used to work for them briefly. Wish I'd stayed with them. And there's this one, which is a Sphere one, the Scarlet Ruse. So I picked these up from Paul because I thought, Travis McGee, famous crime figure. Both me and my mate want to read some and give them a try at some point. And what date is this from? This is looks like a later one. 73, but it's a 1991 reprint. So look at that. So that, I guess, kind of wins cover of the week, I suppose, really. But there you go. So that's a little bit of crime. We're going to finish off, as I said, the Bob Shaw Nightwalk and Jack Vance Blue World were the sort of pips of this for me, the sort of best ones. But this is something which I used to have this book, and I got rid of it, and I don't know why. And I'm not a completist with this author, because the later works do go off the boil, but I am with the early stuff, and this is Bob Shaw, Dark Night in Thailand, with an Ian Miller cover in Orbit. This is circa, let's guess, 89, a short story collection, 89 by Golax, 91 in Orbit. So why did it take 2 years to come out in paperback? Quite a while, isn't it? So maybe that shows there was a change then. People were buying fewer short story collections, fewer were being published. And of course now it's very unusual for an SF writer to actually publish a short story collection. I mean, an interesting thing is Jemison, who's been huge for the last few years, she did that trilogy. There is a short story collection by her called When is Black Future Month? And you would think with all the identity politics that's going on that would really grab people. It's got a great cover. It's a fantastic title. I think it's a really good title. I think she's very average as a writer personally, but there you go. And nobody ever buys it. It's a very hard book to sell, I find. And it's a shame because it looks really good as well. It looks more interesting than her novels. So that's that. Ian Miller did some interesting work. He did a lot of jacket work from about 86 to the early 90s. And you don't hear so much about him now. But there we are, and this is shorts. So I thought really, as it's going free, and I had it once and let it go, you know, I should get it back in for if I ever decide to sort of go complete this with Bob. So that's a bit of an old book haul there, unplanned. And I suppose I better stop now and tidy this place up because it's a day off. The video would have gone out to Glastonbury. She might even run into Liz Williams, the science fiction writer, you never know, who I haven't seen since 2006. But that's the book haul. There'll be something, what's going to happen later after this one? There'll be a Cadbury vlog video in a few days, and there'll be the usual big feature on Saturday. But what? Who can say? Bye for now.